Welcome to Jill's Nomad Survival. My name is Jill, and today we're talking about retirement planning and your finances. I was going to cover finances and wealth investment in this type of lifestyle, but the list got too long, so this part is going to be financial cost of living. The second part will be a different way to look at investing your wealth. And with that, we'll be right back. Before we launch into the material about cost of living, I want to make a quick plug. I'm supporting these videos by also presenting this book, How to Get Ready for Your Post-50 Life. If you like the style of information that I'm giving you, you'll like the book. I'll be covering in the videos everything that's not in this Post-50 book because it's really focused on preparing your physical environment to help you stay independent and control of your life, out of the nursing home, how to save money and avoid regret. So if those things are of interest to you in your post-50 life, then you'll like this book. And with that, so one of the things that was really surprising to me was to see the statistic that only 11% of baby boomers will be able to maintain the same standard of living post-retirement as in their working life. The other issues are Social Security will be gone theoretically by 2022. Medicare and Medicaid are going to probably go without funding. And most people don't know it, but their pensions are underfunded. And what they're doing is they're just cutting the percentage, sometimes as much as half. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty in our future, which is why I think a lot of people are looking at this nomad lifestyle. And so we're going to break all the information down. And part of that is to think about expenses, and that really is your daily expenses, what you're putting money out for every day, your monthly expenses, and your annual or yearly expenses. And as you document all those to establish your cost of living, start to think about things in a different way is what can you maybe barter or trade for, what can you do without, and what can you pay off so that you completely own that, therefore reducing that as an ongoing cost. So part of managing your finances, if money is going to be an issue, is how to do without or how to find a different way to pay for it or a more creative solution, because that's really what's going to be required for the future is a lot more creative money management than the assumption. And here's the big lie. The big assumption is if I have enough money and I have health care, I don't have to worry about anything. It's all anybody talks about. Newsflash, if something's not available, money can't buy it. And if you have real medical issues, healthcare may not fix it. So we have to start thinking differently for those of us who are moving into a very uncertain future and retirement. Personally, I don't even think retirement's an option. I think it's just how are you going to live in this post-50 life. So now would be a good time, if these things are important to you, get something to write with. And I'm going to cover a whole bunch of stuff. First, what will be more expensive possibly. Second, what might be less expensive. So part of the ongoing issues for the nomad lifestyle is one is if you're doing it because you're having credit problems or debt problems, or you want to be debt-free, here's an unhappy surprise. Things will start to cost you more. They charge you more for health insurance. They charge you more for car insurance. All of these things go up in cost when you have poor credit or no credit. I've adopted a zero debt lifestyle and I get punished for that all the time, which means if you're trying to temporarily hook up to utilities, things like that, they often charge you more, or they won't let you have the service at all. So that was an unhappy surprise. It's much more difficult. You know, we lose money because you can't buy in bulk. So often you're having to buy smaller, more expensive containers for products. It's also higher when you're further and further away from the city. The further out you are, the more transportation costs, delivery costs, the higher the product or service itself will probably be. Repairs are often higher cost. Number one, they don't know you. Number two, they think they might be able to get one over on you. And three, you're at their mercy. If there's only one car repair shop place, there's nothing you can do. That is where you have to get fixed. If you're in an RV, you no longer have a house if you're waiting for repair. So now you're looking at rentals or hotel costs. Longer transportation distances, I think I've mentioned, it's like 100 miles round trip for me just to go get groceries. So I can't spend 10 bucks on gas to go buy $10 in groceries. So you really have to think about things differently. Same thing with 911, if you're calling the ambulances, if you're needing people to take you places, you know, all those costs add up because transportation is much greater. So that leads us to fuel costs. You'll probably be spending more on fuel. Your energy costs depends on what your setup is. Things like entertainment might be higher cost for you because you have less access. So you're either driving farther distances or you're having to pay more for specialty services if you can find them. One of the other big things I found is since I don't have storage, I don't have the tools to fix stuff the way I used to. So you might be incurring more costs having people fix things that you could do yourself, but you don't have the tools or the resources. For me, it's the space to get things done. So those are some of the things, you know, that might be cost more. I think one of the things people assume that will be a lower cost are rent and mortgage, and that really depends on what your overhead is. If your Nomad vehicle or transportation service, whatever it is you pick, is fully paid off, probably less. But things like insurance and rental, for if you're parking someplace, that can be a higher or a lower cost. Some people are looking at boondocking. Boondocking, technically, if you're on BLM, Bureau of Land Management land, you have to move every 2 weeks. So it's not a long-term option, it's a short-term option. So the more often you move, the higher your overhead is, versus if you're staying, you know, for like a month in a trailer park, it actually is way cheaper. So you might pay $30 a night to stay in an RV park and only $300 for the month. So it's always important to figure out how long, and I usually would just spend a month because it was cheaper to spend a month in one place than, you know, spend 10 days there. So it's a different way of thinking about things. You know, something that you can do with where you park, which is what I do, is you can trade services, you know, labor, products, resources, whatever, in exchange for rent. So if you eliminate your mortgage and you eliminate your rent, you're really only looking at things like communication, utilities, which is negotiable, food, things like that. So the more you break out what your monthly expenses are, the more creatively you can think about how there might be a different way to manage them if money is an issue for you. I think I was always told Truth or Consequences was the cheapest place to stay. I've seen private places less, but at the time, and this was quite a few years ago, it was $135 a month for you know, for the monthly rental, for space and utilities and internet. So that was about the cheapest place you could live month to month in an RV. The average right now in America, at least in this area, is about $300 a month in addition to electricity. You know, because in the summertime, some people are running, you know, 2 air conditioners, and in wintertime, if you're using electric heat, can be quite expensive. Propane and electric heat tend to run about the same, so whatever from what I've been told, it's about the same costs in terms of what I figured out and I use. A lot of it depends on how cold or how warm you need it. Things that you won't have to be paying are things like property taxes. The less you have, the less there is to insure. So that's something that you can factor in by simplifying. There's a lot less things that you have to insure, a lot less things you have to take care of. You know, maintenance costs can be very high on a house. So most of the trailer stuff I can do myself. So that's a different way of looking at it. You know, what can you do for yourself versus what you used to have to pay somebody to come and do for you. I think the biggest issue I have found is the more mobile you are, so the more that you're moving, the higher your costs will be, because you're going to have more wear and tear on your vehicle. You're going to have to be constantly finding a new place to stay, and that isn't always doable, especially if you're in a larger vehicle. I know a lot of people do vans, and so they do stealth camping in the cities or the urban areas. Most Walmarts still allow you to park overnight for free, but that's short-term, not long-term. And it can be really stressful. I have found, you know, moving a lot is actually very stressful. So that's not something I did for very long. And again, I usually just stayed about a month because that that was easier for me because then I could get to know the place and, you know, kind of get my feet and experience things without having to pack up and move. Packing up and moving can be very labor intensive depending on what your actual setup is. If you are moving a lot or you plan to do a lot of traveling, less is better, smaller is better. So in terms of overall cost of living, one of the things that I really advocate in this lifestyle is to be very creative in how you're living and how you're negotiating. So, you know, as you know, or if you don't know, at one point I had a normal life, you know, a house, a 401k, 2 cars, the whole deal, and I lost everything. So now I look at it very differently. And my philosophy is if I don't own it, I don't own it, and I don't buy it until I can own it. So, you know, I purchased this horse trailer for very little money, even though I can't fix it up right now. I own it. So everything, if you own it, then you don't have to worry about it as a future cost. And so that's, you know, a different way of thinking about it. Again, our world only tells you that you're valid if you have debt. Debt equals credit, which equals dependability and reliability, which is ridiculous to me. If you can pay cash for something, I would think that you would want that. But you do get charged more. That's kind of been an ongoing issue of having things cost more because you don't carry debt. To me, that's insane. Another, you know, trick that I would do that I could suggest is when you're looking at utilities, you know, summer heat, cooling costs, if you're doing that, winter heating costs, is if you're mobile, is you can adjust your utility costs to moving to a different location. The caveat is the nicest places at the worst time of year are the most expensive. So Palm Springs, California in summertime, cheap. Palm Springs, California in wintertime, expensive. So it might be your aha idea, but it's everybody else's. I think the other biggest thing that I have found, and someday I want to do a video on simplicity, poverty, and austerity and the differences between them, is that by not having money, I've learned a lot about what I actually need money for and how much I can do without. So as much as people are afraid of not having enough money at retirement, I wouldn't be as afraid of that as I would be willing to explore what you can and can do without. And one of the things I've noticed, I don't know about other parts of the world, but in America, we problem solve by buying a product or a service instead of thinking what's the principle behind that product or service and can I do it myself. We are consumers, and so we solve our problems by consuming. And so one of the things that this has taught me is how much I don't need, how my initial reaction of what I can go buy doesn't always serve me very well if I can't go get it, and how that's really shifted my ability to think differently about how to solve my problems and how I want to live. And what I've learned is I want less and less and less. It's less to pay for, it's less to take care of. I don't like spending my time taking care of my stuff. So my exchange is I would rather invest that time and money into my health than my stuff. So it's not about the money and the health care as far as I see. It's about how we want to live and how to negotiate that in a different and new way. And so with that, we're going to end this part about cost of living and finances. Next, we're going to talk about investment and wealth. That's going to be really different. And so we will hold our breath right until that one comes out. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting. You can find this a little bit more over at jillelizabeth.net. And as always, I want to say thank you and see you next time.